So the topic of my vlog today is kind of a big one, and as I sat down to kind of write my thoughts and get them all together, it was so hard. Because I'm coming at this topic as a writer, as the mom of a teen, as a former teen myself, and so coming at the topic of sex in YA writing has proven to be so dang difficult. So I'm scripting this so that hopefully I won't wander off into many different semi-related areas and I can stick just to the topic at hand. So we were actually just talking about this the other night at my new reading group about how when I was like 12 or 13, I don't know if YA wasn't around or if I just didn't really know about it, but I literally went directly from like Sweet Valley High and Babysitter's Club to Stephen King. I mean, like almost overnight. It was a jarring transition for me. And it was from Stephen King that I vividly remember this, reading my first, sexy scene in a book. It was the book Thinner. And if you haven't read Thinner, the premise of this book is there's this man and there is a traffic incident that leads him to be cursed by this gypsy to kind of wither away and lose all this weight, and she curses him to be thinner. And so, but the book starts out with the main character, this man, and he's driving in this car and his wife is beside him and she's being, sexy and distracting, I guess. So I remember the very repetitive description that was going on about this these distracting events that were happening while this man's driving. And so for my 12-year-old self, yeah, that may have been a bit much, and that was like way beyond my scope of like kind of understanding things. But at the same time, it was good in the fact that it wasn't glorifying anything. If anything, my 12-year-old brain took away from that even when you're like 40 and married, you still should like never fool around in a car because it will lead to vehicular homicide and like a gypsy curse. That'll teach you kids. Sex is bad. Sex leads to gypsy curses and, death. So one of the first things that I thought of in thinking about this topic was a conference that I attended, and I listened to a presentation by Sarah Zarr, and she was talking about how she deals with kind of more mature content, particularly sex, I guess, in YA literature. And she said something to the effect of writing realistically. Realistic doesn't necessarily have to mean graphic. And pretty much that idea right there is the embodiment of what my feelings are on the subject. You can be realistic. You can, I think, give a true and honest picture of things without having to go into painstaking detail of everything that's going on. The way I tend to think about writing is that, not even just YA, any kind of writing, is that characters are people. And people sometimes make really poor choices and poor decisions. And that's realism right there, is that people make horrible decisions all the time. And I think that's what makes writing interesting, is to be able to see those kinds of situations and, to be able to see the different outcomes and alleyways that stem from those poor decisions. And just kind of, be able to explore that and see that without having to go through it yourself, without having to go out and make those poor decisions yourself. One of the biggest misconceptions I think people have, adults and parents, is that kids are getting these ideas from books. And, I don't know, while it may be true that, they get their hands on something and it's, the first time they're coming across this idea, okay, maybe, probably not, but maybe, it's certainly not going to be the last time that they're going to think about this type of thing. And so I think we as writers, I don't think it's our job to try to shelter readers from this. I think our job, if we're responsible, is to give them context for these ideas. They're going to have these ideas. These are not new ideas. Sex, violence, alcohol, poor decision making, these are all things that have been happening, forever. And so to think naively that, kids, if they're not reading books, aren't somehow going to stumble across these things, it's just kind of, it's silly. And so I think I think our job as writers is to give these kids context and to give them not new ideas, but just new ways to think about these ideas. To give them context that's meaningful and helpful, and if you're a decent writer, you know, a poignant way, a poignant context to think about these ideas. I think my job as a writer and as a parent, honestly, is not to arm my kids with all these new ideas, but to arm them with critical thinking. Take an idea that's already there and flip it and make them, you know, oh, think about it in a new way, and give them new context. So I myself am actually LDS. I am Mormon. I don't write for the Mormon genre, and so I don't know if it's really there or if it's just perceived on my behalf, but I feel like sometimes I'm judged on some of the content that is in my writing. The only thing I can say you know, to that is that I'm not writing strictly for an LDS audience, and my characters are not LDS, so they're not necessarily, you know, going to behave in that manner. The characters, you know, that come to me so far, it has not been in, you know, the LDS genre, and so I just try to write those stories honestly, and you know, a lot of those things are not going to align necessarily with my religious beliefs. So I decided for this post I would really put myself out there and go out on a limb, and I'm going to share a little bit about a little part from the book that I'm writing right now. A quick background, so in my story I have this 15-year-old girl, and she's a ghost, and she's remembering these parts of her life. So this character makes all kinds of bad decisions, and now that she's a ghost, she's having to like look back and kind of relive all that and watch it from a third person, you know, standpoint, and it's really, you know, harsh and difficult for her to see herself making these bad decisions and not being able to do anything about it. So basically, you know, the one sex scene, if that's what you want to call it, in my book is where she's standing here in her bedroom and she's, you know, watching herself with this boy. And I have just right here, there's one paragraph that describes the whole thing, and it says, he gently pulled the collar of my shirt, urging me toward him. Then he was kissing me, his hands moving everywhere, sliding into places I shouldn't have left wide open. And I got feedback from several beta readers that was just kind of too descriptive, even though it's not even a paragraph, it's one sentence. But that just the way it was worded was a little too kind of like, yee. I felt like I just needed that one sentence written correctly, if it had the right wording, it would convey all of the regret that she now had, you know, watching herself making this, you know, bad decision and not being able, she was powerless to do anything about it because it's actually already happened. So just to wrap it up, you know, from the writer's standpoint, you know, no sex just for the sake of sex. You know, it doesn't need to be gratuitous. It doesn't have to be graphic to get your point across. I think we need to convey, you know, the realistic consequences for things. That's what makes writing interesting, is to see, you know, I think it's okay to put your characters in those types of situations, but then I think you have to be responsible about, you know, kind of showing the outcome of that. I think it's important, you know, to write stuff well. Kids deserve good stories. They deserve to read, you know, characters who are experiencing things maybe, you know, so they don't have to. What's so wrong in that? Go forth and write. What's my job as a parent? I just totally depressed myself because I can't put into words what my job as a parent is. I'm a good mom.